What's going on, gentlemen? The Maverick here, Mark, bringing you Division 2 content. Alright, so as you can tell from the thumbnail, it is a picture of the map of DC and its surrounding venues. Alright, so one thing to note, that's how much loot can be farmed at any given time in the game. Alright, let that sink in for a moment, gentlemen. I mean, there are literally limitless things to do with loot tied to those things. Whether you want to go save some guys, whether you want to go blow up some guys, whether you want to do anything, there is so much to do, and the only thing holding you back is how much time it takes to do it. So, with that being said, why is there a loot problem? If we have so many things to do, and the only thing holding us back is time, why is loot so bad? Everything you do gives you loot. Everything. Missions. There are literally, 10 different activities in the open world that you can farm at any given time. Every time I turn around, I see a video about this new loot cave, that the Division 2 developers just lose their crap over because people are, exploiting the loot, and they make it their priority to get rid of that. So why is the Division 2 having the loot problem that we have? Why? It's not making any sense, gentlemen. Let's look at it. All right, so you kill a boss, and he drops 3 items. You're like, oh, you run over to them. If you're really lucky, it's a heroic boss, because heroic is about the only way you get good loot on a semi-regular basis. Now, there have been a couple of people on Reddit that have done the math. I unfortunately do not have the time to jump out there and look at the thousands and thousands of pieces of loot. There is one such gentleman on Reddit that has done such a thing. He looked at thousands of loot drops, and what he discovered is that the loot stinks. All right, let me break that down a little bit. All right, so after farming thousands and thousands and thousands of pieces of loot, he created spreadsheets to basically record those thousands upon thousands of pieces. He broke them down into different categories, and I'm going to leave a link to all this so that you can look at it and feel probably a little disgusted like I am looking at the data, because I don't like seeing the background, what's happening in the background. Like, I don't really like seeing that, especially when it's this bad. But I digress. All right, so what we're looking at right now is that one piece of loot in 900, 1 in 900, all right, is good. Per se. Good as in, well, it's going to have 3 rolls, 3 random rolls, mind you, that are going to be maxed out. The quote-unquote God roll. Now, the fact that the RNG gods have to be with you for those 3 rolls to actually synergize with the piece of gear that you're looking for, and it has to be the rolls that you actually want, mind you. Well, that just gets astronomically high. Like, the RNG on top of RNG on top of RNG does not care. And I think that is the core of what the problem really is that while yes, we want random pieces of loot, we want something static to where all loot is somewhat good, just some pieces are naturally going to be better than others, and basically every piece of gear fits into some sort of mold that maybe can be used in some sort of way. You know what I mean? First off, 1/5 of all drops are purple. All right. Purple gets you nowhere right now. I mean, absolutely nowhere. Where are we going to go with purples? Now, the original thought on that was they're going to put the purples in so that we can have a source to break down the items and get our components back for further recalibration and such. All right. That's all well and good, but in order to craft, and gentlemen, I'm going to touch on crafting a little bit later, but in order to craft, you have to have the yellow component from each brand set, all right, in order to craft that brand set. So already, you're not getting what you need to do the crafting anyway. All right, so I believe they are going to address this. They're going to do away with purples. So that will immediately increase our loot pool by 1/5. All right, which is fine. You'll get 1/5 more crap loot. That's essentially where we're at. There's no incentive. There's no incentive to go and do heroics anymore, because the difference between running, like, say you're farming an exotic. All right. The difference between farming an exotic on challenge that takes around 18 minutes to do, if you've got a decent group, about 20 minutes, maybe 22 minutes. All right. The difference between challenging and heroic is 2% drop rate on exotics. 2%. All right. And the RNG says, we don't care how many times you've run this mission, even though this one exotic only drops from these 2 missions. All right. We don't care that you ran this mission 1,800 times, but this other guy that's only run it 3 times, he gets the loot. He gets the exotic drop. Now, before they come out with a recalibration station upgrade for the exotics, that was murder. You would imagine farming anything, let's just say 1,000 times. The one piece of loot that you need or that you really want drops, and boom, it's got a 3% across the board rate on it. I mean, 3% across the board. 3% damage, 3% haste, 3% status effects, whatever it is. 3%. All right. Now you're looking at just garbage. Thanks to the recalibration station, that has definitely improved. Everybody loves the recalibration station. All right. Now, granted, they did institute, the bottom line rolls. There is a minimum roll on exotics now that probably should be instituted across all of it, but nobody's talking about that. And that's what I brought up today. That's why this conversation is being started today, is that this needs to be talked about. They do not seem to be listening to our conversation on player power, or the fact that anything they institute is being broken anyway. Someone determined we needed super hard bosses and we needed this super hard content, but instead of that being well thought out, we just got bullet sponges and excessively damaging enemies that essentially two-shot us. All right, flip that around. Now we've got loot. They said, oh, we're going to change loot from our stat-based system where you have, all the rolls add up to a certain value, and you have to look for those rolls that have low rolls and one really high roll. All right. Which meant, we farmed like 2 pieces of gear prior to Warlords in New York to get high rolls. Now, everything's somewhat viable, but it's the RNG on top of RNG on top of RNG on top of RNG has rendered it useless. All right. I'm trying to keep this video short, gentlemen, because loot is something we all want, and it's something we all need. It's what drives the entire economy of the game. Yes, the game can be fun, but part of that fun comes from you getting good loot at the end of your fun. Like, at the end of the day, you want to sit down and say, yeah, I got these 10 items today. Oh my god, they're amazing. All right, you don't want to spend... The average person gets to spend a couple hours a day playing this game. What is that, 3-4 missions at the most, if you're really lucky? You did 4 challenge missions, and you wound up with 1 piece of loot in 2 hours. Alright, if you're lucky, if you're extremely lucky. Now, that doesn't mean that 1 piece of loot is going to synergize with what you're looking for. It just means, alright, that's a decent piece of loot. I'm going to stick that away in my little bank, and hopefully one day I'll have enough pieces of loot to put a build together. Because that's what it feels like, gentlemen. It feels like if you don't have just a completely absurd amount of time to farm, and you don't have a decent team to farm with, it takes forever to get anything of value, and to get anything of value out of this game right now. All right, so they're going to increase our loot by 1/5. All right, cool. All right, so earlier I talked about the recalibration station and the crafting station. Okay, I don't know how many people have sat down and tried to craft an item, but I would recommend going and crafting, let's just say, an assault rifle that you want. All right, max out all your stuff and go to the crafting station. Max out all your materials, go to the crafting station, sit down, and just craft away, one after another. All right, I did this. All right, and I discovered that you're gonna get, at best, a halfway decent roll on maybe 2 attributes, and you've got to hope that the 3rd attribute's decent, and you're just gonna have to live with everything else. There is almost no way to craft a decent item, okay? Unless it's a named item that can be crafted, and one of the rolls is automatically maxed out. That's the only way. Now, that being said, we flip that around to skill mods. All right, I have seen, must be somewhere in the neighborhood of like 1 million skill mods drop by this point. Not one has been max rolled. Not one. Now, I've done legendary content, I've done heroic content, I've done all these things, and not one has been maxed out. Not one skill mod. So either that's broken, or it's just not there. Those rolls don't actually go that high, because I don't see how that I can have maxed out rolls on seemingly like almost all of the items actually in my recalibration station. Most of my stuff at this point is at max roll. So when I want to switch something out, I've got the max roll to put in there. So what's happening with skill mods? I don't know, but they're not talking about it. I mean, I realize we've been entirely buggy, and we've had these game-breaking bugs, but gentlemen, I mean, we are bleeding players at this point. We are literally bleeding players. I mean, people, I mean, if another game comes out that is halfway decent and has a few things in order, not to mention players are just straight up just putting the game down. They're walking away from it. And I hate that. To me, this is a labor of love. I like the Tom Clancy games. I like the genre. I like the story. Everything is there. The game is so beautiful. I mean, it is an incredibly beautiful game. But their emphasis on beauty is now being undermined by all the other mechanics, and it's time for it to stop. Well, gentlemen, I'm going to leave you on that note, and as always, I've been the Maverick, and I'm out.